thank everybody here for coming, especially thanks to Andrew and Alex St. Cyr from the Communications Department and the City of Saco in particular. They've been highly supportive of this event for many years, and we're glad that you all came today. We have a lot to do and not a lot of time to do it in, so the format will be Peter's going to give the keynote address, and then I have 4 speakers lined up to do short presentations, and then after that, Kevin will moderate a panel discussion. Everybody gets a chance to talk, so or ask questions. I ask that you hold questions for presenters till after we do all the presentations. Other than that, I think we're all set to go. Peter Slavinsky is going to keynote for us again. He's been a huge supporter of this event. We're really lucky and grateful to have him here today. So he's a marine geologist at the Maine Geological Survey and somebody that we all know. So go ahead, Peter, take it away, and thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm going to start my timer here, so I'm not going to be too late. I'm going to shoot for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to try to cover some information on some of the shoreline changes that have occurred since the last time we spoke, which was last March. So we're going to look at basically what happened from 2024 to the summer of 2025, because that's when we have data for, and we're going to finish looking at some imagery that my peer here, Will Kachitsky from University of New England, has captured to show you some of the more recent updates of what's happening along the shoreline. So just a reminder, all of our data is available on the Maine Beach Mapping Program website, and what we typically monitor every summer are 3 things, what we call dune change, beach change, and dry beach width change. We'll just very quickly run through what that looks like, how we measure it. So if you're walking along the shoreline, looking along the shoreline, how we measure dune change is we'll measure it from year to year. We'll measure the toe of the dune. And then subsequently, if there's erosion, we'll measure the toe of the dune, as it moves landward, or if it moved seaward, that would be accretion. Then we measure what's called beach change. We locate where the high water line is along the shoreline. And so we'll measure that in 2024, and if there was erosion, we measure where it is in 2025, and the difference between those two is something we'll present. Finally, we measure what's called dry beach width, and that's actually the change in the width of the beach from about the mean high water line to a seawall or the toe of the dune. So in this example, I'm showing a dry beach width in 2024, and if there was erosion, that's maybe what it would look like in 2025. So those are the features that we're monitoring as part of this program every year. So what I wanted to get into next is what are some of the trends we've seen from 2024 to 2025. So this is the entire Saco shoreline from the jetty on the right to Goosefair Brook on the left of the image. And you can see anywhere there's yellow or orange is indicating that in terms of the dunes, there's been erosion, over the past year. Anywhere you see greens, that means there's been accretion. And we're looking at a scale of up to about 25 feet on that y-axis. So basically, we're going to look at 2 sections of the shoreline, basically Saco North, which is roughly from Bayview up to Goosefair Brook, and then Saco South, which is just from north of the state park down into the Camp Ellis area. So in terms of the northern area, this area grew on average about 1.5 feet. You can see that there was pockets of much, much larger growth, and some small pockets of erosion, but the net trend was about plus 1.5 feet. Now statewide, most dunes grew about 10 feet. So just to put that into perspective, there was stability to growth, but it was not at the level that we saw statewide. The southern end of the shoreline was very different. You can see a distinct area from about Eagle Avenue up to about the state park, where there was continued dune erosion from 2024 to 2025, and then significant growth from that area north. One of the reasons for that was there was a lot of dune restoration projects which took place. Roughly where I have that label that says Seawall South all the way on the left-hand side to Seaside. We're going to hold questions until afterwards, please. So this had a slightly lower recovery rate of about just 1.2 feet and you can tell that, there was a distinct difference between the southern portion and the northern portion of this study area, with north being to the left. In terms of beach change, also some interesting trends. Again, along the shoreline, anywhere you see greens, the beach grew. Anywhere you see yellows or reds is where the beach lost. So when we're looking at a scale here from minus 40 feet to plus 60 feet. And again, we'll look at those two different sections of the shoreline. Yes? Yeah, this is summer 2024 to, yes, yep. So the last time we spoke, we covered information about what happened from 2023 to 2024. Now we're looking at summer 2024 to summer 2025. Sorry. So in terms of the northern area, this is really interesting. You can see that there was beach growth up to about 20 feet on the southern section of this area. So basically from where that seawall is in the middle of the beach up to about Bayview. And then from Bayview up to about Curtis Avenue, you had pretty significant beach erosion, up to about 40 feet of erosion. And then as you got closer to Goose Fair Brook, there was accretion. And the Goose Fair Brook changes all the time. But statewide, the average was only about 11 feet of growth. And in this section, if you average everything, we're looking at about 22 feet, 23 feet of growth. So that was pretty good for this section of beach, aside from that area of erosion. Along the southern stretch, there was pretty much loss of beach width from the jetty up to about Beacon or Fairhaven Avenue, and then general stability. So you see that where there's not much change from about Fairhaven Avenue up to about State Park path. Not much change. Pretty good stability of the beach, and then beach growth. That's telling us that sand is moving from the south to the north. Last thing we look at is dry beach, and this is very similar to beach width, because if the dunes were somewhat stable and the beach is changing, that's what's going to be driving what the dry beach width changes are, okay, because they're integrally tied. So similar to that, we see a mean loss of about 1 foot in terms of dry beach width along the entire stretch of shoreline. Statewide, we had plus 2 feet. In the northern section, very, very, very similar to what we saw for beach change. You see a lot of growth of the beach up to about 20 feet in terms of width, from about the seawall area up to about where I have that Seaside Avenue label. Along the central portion of Bayview here, going into near Goose Fair Brook, you've got loss of dry beach width, and then growth along Goose Fair Brook. Again, that's reflecting very, very similar to the trend, what we saw with beach change. And just like in beach change for the southern area, we had a mean loss of about 1 foot for this whole area, while the state had about plus 2 feet. And again, most of the negatives are from the jetty to about Beacon Avenue, Fairhaven Avenue, and then Fairhaven Avenue up to about State Park was relatively stable, and then some growth at the northern end of this area. So the take-home point of shoreline changes is we had a pretty, we had stable to some growth of the dune. That's a good thing, we don't always see that at Camp Ellis or at the Saco beaches. But it's important to point out that the statewide average was plus 10 feet of growth, and we only saw about 1 foot of growth of the dune. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that there were private citizens and property owners that did a lot of beach or dune restoration projects. In terms of beach change, there was also, general stability of about 0.4 feet for the whole stretch of shoreline, but there was that one area of big loss in the northern study area, and the statewide average was plus 11 feet. In terms of dry beach width change, again, there was a foot of loss, which when you're looking at the change of the beach, that's really not that much, but it is noted that the state average was plus 2 feet. So we're well below the state averages in terms of continued recovery from the 2024 storms, but at least there was mostly a positive trend. So that's a good thing. I want to finish by looking at some of the conditions from March of 2024, the last time we met, to March of 2025, and this is where I want to thank Will for getting his students out and providing me with some images. This isn't going to be the whole shoreline, just a section. So here you've got closest to the jetties, you've got the seawalled area from about Bay Avenue up to Riverside, and then you can see the North and Main intersection where there's a very, very narrow beach at that area. Everybody probably knows this, but there has been beach nourishment that's been occurring, and I think it's done now. But when this image was taken on March 8th, it was in the middle of being done. And you can actually see, if you look closely, where it says Main Avenue, you can see some tractors working, and you can see actually the dredge pumping sand out at that area. So they're working at a pretty high tide right here, which is interesting. But the fact that they got the project done and on schedule is really good. Moving up to around the Ferry Beach Ecology School, so we're looking at Fairhaven Avenue north to about Ferry Park. You can see the geotubes pretty clearly, and a relatively wide beach in March of 2025. In 2026, you can see that that beach has narrowed. You can see a little bit more scalloping of the beach. But in general, the geotubes are exposed a little bit more in 2026 than they were in 2025. You can also see the snow on the ground from a couple weeks ago. Moving up, this is an area of the shoreline. You can see the seawall right in the middle that stretches along, I think, 4 or 5 properties. And on both south and north sides of that area, there was pretty extensive dune restoration, which was undertaken in 2024 by multiple properties, especially on the south side of the seawall. And I kind of labeled that. They're a little harder to see here because of what they planted was already kind of taken out a little bit by March of 2025. But if you look closely, on the right-hand side, there is a property, and I don't think you can see my, can you guys see my mouse? Yeah, okay. Right in here, and then right in here, you can still see a whole area of dune grass that was planted. So this whole stretch, even going south of this, was planted with dune grass and restored in terms of the elevation of the dune. And in 2025, you know, you really can't tell that much of a difference in terms of shoreline change. So that's a good thing, and I think that's why the dune growth from 2024 to 2025, which I showed, was pretty significant along the south side of that seawall. By 2026, again, you can see, you know, there really hasn't been that much of a change. That's good. You can see the dunes grew out from 2025 into 2026, and they've pretty much stayed there. So that's a good thing. Moving up the shoreline to outlook to roughly Shore Avenue. In 2025, there's a pretty wide beach, and you can actually see a narrow strip of dunes in front of the houses here. And the width of those dunes vary along different houses. 2026, you can see that that beach has gotten narrower, but the protective dunes are still there. Okay, so that's good. So we had a relatively mild winter. You know, there were some storms, but the beach is doing what it's supposed to, which is to take the brunt of the storms, and then hopefully the storms don't actually pull all the dune sand away, which is what we've seen before, like in the winter of 2024. So that's a good sign. And up near Goose Fair Brook, you know, this is an area that sees dramatic changes with the shifting of the brook. On the Saco side, there was a very narrow beach at that time, and I did want to point out there's this eroded dune on the Ocean Park side. That's another area that got restored by the county projects. As you can see, the difference is, first of all, in Goose Fair Brook, how much it's changed. But there's no significant beach or dune changes along the northern stretch of Saco here, which is great. And you can also see the dune restoration project that was undertaken by the county at Ocean Park to kind of protect that breach point, which you really see how eroded that was in 2025. So final considerations, and then we'll pass it on to the next speakers unless we have some questions, is, you know, now that we've done all this stuff and the county projects have been completed, and we're getting ready for the federal projects to begin, monitoring is going to be really important. So I think Will's going to speak a little bit about that later. But between our office, UNE, and the Corps, I think there's going to be some good monitoring pre-project that's going to be occurring. One of the keys also is to monitor some of these dune projects that were done through our program, for instance, through the imagery that Will captures, to get a sense of how successful they were. And so far, I'd say they were relatively successful. I will recommend, you know, the dune restoration we saw was simply mounding up sand by beach scraping and then planting it. The image I'm showing here on the right is a restored dune that was completed in Wells at Drake's Island Beach, where they use what we call enhanced dune restoration techniques. So you can see that core was placed in there by tractors, and that core creates a solid protective core that then the sand is mounted on and planted. And so even if that sand gets taken away, that core stays and is protective. So that's something to consider. It is not cheap, but it's something to at least consider if we undergo big erosive events like we did in January 2024. And I did note that some paths, this was a recommendation last time, were limited in terms of individual footpaths or kind of rerouted. And that needs to continue. That's a recommendation we had last time because all paths are runways for floodwaters, especially in areas where the dunes kind of create mounds and then you've got a path that cuts through the dunes. You got to either create a contiguous dune and have the path go up and over it or reroute that path so it's not facing straight out to the open ocean. So that's all I have for you this morning. So hopefully that'll kind of set the stage for the rest of the speakers and also give you an idea of what's been happening over about the past year. Thanks.
Pete. One thing, David, for not to put you on the spot, Pete, but so the maps you showed were just Saco only. You were comparing to other, the rest of Maine being 11 feet versus 1. So just for our Scarborough, Biddeford, Old Orchard members and attendees here, so your website, I'm trying to give you a promotion here, your website shows the other beaches as well. It's
Yes.
yes.
Anybody can go in and
Maine.gov and Department of Geological survey maps and.
Yeah, if you just Google Maine Beach Mapping Program and you get to our landing page, there's a viewer that shows you all the changes, kind of color-coded like I showed. And then if you scroll down on that page at the bottom, it'll show you overall long-term changes. So, we started this program in 2007, so overall changes averaged over that time period. But then there's a table that shows changes from the previous year. And that's where you'd see some of the data that I just presented. Thanks, Kevin, for pointing that out.
I've seen that restoration project at Drake's Island. It's mighty impressive. But yes, I'm sure it cost a ton of money, but it's really cool. And that picture doesn't really do it justice. It's really, I'm sure you've seen it, but it's very impressive. So the slides for the presentations, they'll be available. I'll email everybody a link to a folder with all the slides. You can go in and get them and do with them as you wish. For those that aren't on the panel, I will make a post on the SOS Facebook page with the link to the slides, but all the presentations will be in there. Brian Ambrett is our next speaker. He's the director of the State Resilience Office. There you are. And he's a good friend and been here often, and I'm sure he has a lot of cool stuff to say, so go say it.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here this morning. I think this is my 5th or 6th year. David might be able to help me with that one, but we're getting pretty good at this. The 2 takeaways I want to leave you with today, I'll just give them to you right up front. There's been some reorganization in the state government of existing programs and some new programming that will help make these programs more available to communities in a more consistent, cohesive way. So I'm going to talk through the process of the opening of the Maine Office of Community Affairs. And then there are several grant programs that are open right now, so I'll touch on those to be sure that you have that information and your communities can take advantage of it. So my name is Brian Ambrett. I'm director of the State Resilience Office, which now lives in the new Maine Office of Community Affairs. The Maine Office of Community Affairs, or MOCA, was established actually 2 years ago by the legislature. It took a little bit of organization to determine which programs across state government were going to move into this new office and actually go through the logistics of making all that happen. So in September of last year, the programs officially moved into MOCA, and this is the list of who is now under one roof at the Maine Office of Community Affairs. So programs that, if you're a town official, you're probably very familiar with: the Maine Housing Opportunity Program, the Municipal Planning Assistance Program, the Maine Coastal Program, Volunteer Maine, our Code Enforcement Program. And then the State Resilience Office is a new entity, but it houses 2 existing programs, the Community Resilience Partnership, which you've heard me talk about at length before in these meetings in previous years, and the Floodplain Management Program, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about this final Flood Ready Maine initiative as well in a moment. So the State Resilience Office, as I said, is organized into 3 areas. The Community Resilience Partnership Grant Program. I think all of the communities represented in this room have participated at some point in this program and taken advantage of the grants. We have a grant round open right now through June, so please do take a look at that. The Floodplain Management Program, which has been around for several decades in the state of Maine and certainly has engaged with communities in this room quite a bit. And then our new Flood Ready Maine initiative, which is brought to us by a piece of legislation that passed last spring, a year ago, called LD1. And there are several different components of that that landed in the Bureau of Insurance and in the Maine Emergency Management Agency. The component of it that landed in the State Resilience Office is this Flood Ready Maine initiative. The really big piece of this for communities across the state is that very soon we're going to be starting up a program that places certified floodplain managers in each of the 10 regional councils across the state. So some of your communities will have floodplain managers on staff. We're going to augment that capacity at the regional level here in southern Maine at SMPDC so that there will be more capacity available to you as planners, as emergency managers, and as flood risk mitigators to be able to do that really important work. And those 10 certified floodplain managers at the regional councils will all be networked and communicating with one another to make sure that the best practices and the availability of resources are all reaching. With this flood to improve flood maps and future-looking flood models across the state. As you've probably heard us talk in this room in the past, we have a coastal flood risk model under development right now by the Maine DOT and their consultant, the Woods Hole Group. The results of those models should be coming out at some point in phases over the course of this year. We're really interested in doing something similar on the inland and riverine side, bringing inland flood risk information to communities as well. We're going to undertake a improvement to community flood maps as well. So the FEMA maps that you're all familiar with, we'll be doing this on primarily on the inland side in places across the state where there have not been mapping updates in quite a long time, including inland parts of Washington, Washington, Hancock, and then also Cumberland and York counties. So that's an overview of what's going on in the State Resilience Office. I could talk quite a bit longer, but I know David's got a full agenda this morning, so I'll keep it moving. You all are familiar with the Community Resilience Partnership Grant Program. This slide is just a reminder that we're here. We've made quite a bit of investments in communities across the state. We have 300 communities participating in some way in the program right now. We're starting to fill in this map really, really well. And that there's a grant round open right now with applications being accepted through June 5th. The Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund over at Maine Department of Transportation is also open right now with a Working Waterfronts grant. And very soon, as in the next week or two, we'll be launching their standard Infrastructure Adaptation Fund grant offering for infrastructure resilience across the state, and that will have a similar application timeline as this program on the screen. So look for that very, very soon. And then it's not only the State Resilience Office at MOCA that has resources available for communities around resiliency and sustainability. I won't read through everything on this slide, but there are components of programming and resources and grants available through many, many programs within the Maine Office of Community Affairs and across other departments in state government. So in your free time, take a look at this slide and make sure you're aware of these resources and reach out to us at MOCA anytime if you need help getting in touch with these folks. That's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rob Wood from DEP. Worked with Rob once or twice, and I'd like, DEP has been a lot more accommodating than I think the reputation that preceded it, and we were able to get some much-needed permits the last time I dealt with him, and we totally appreciate that. Rob's the director of the Bureau of Land Resources, and it's all yours. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us. And we always appreciate well-formulated permit applications that make our jobs a little bit easier. So as David mentioned, my name is Rob Wood. I'm the director of the Bureau of Land Resources with the Department of Environmental Protection. We administer the Natural Resources Protection Act, stormwater management law, site law, among other state statutes as well. And so this morning I just wanted to touch on a few coastal regulatory updates. There have been a few statutory and rule changes over the past couple of years that are worth noting, and just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page about our current regulatory environment and some recent changes. Mostly we'll talk about sand dunes, but also coastal bluffs as well. Got it. Okay, thank you. Great. So, starting with seawalls and sand dunes, this topic is probably old hat for most of you, but I always want to just start here and make sure that we provide kind of this basic information for folks who might be in a position to need to come in for an approval from the department. So, if you have a seawall in a coastal sand dune system, just a reminder that that can be replaced in kind through permit by rule. I made a note here that when an existing seawall is being replaced in kind, so same dimensions, length, width, height, that can include larger footers and tiebacks to strengthen the foundation and supports for that seawall if those footers and tiebacks are below grade. So that's a common question that we get. You can also replace a seawall with different dimensions through an individual permit under Chapter 355 of the department's rules if that new structure is less damaging to the dune system, wildlife habitat, and adjacent properties than the previously existing structure. And so we have gotten quite a few applications in the past couple of years for seawall replacements where we have been able to approve a structure that is of different dimensions and in a different location further landward, because we were able to find that those structures were ultimately less damaging to the coastal sand dune system. Then I wanted to highlight a recent statutory change that that occurred in the previous legislative session. This new statutory section is now in effect in Title 38 and Section 480-E, subsection 19. There is now a provision for a one-time height increase of an existing seawall. And that is permittable under very specific circumstances that are detailed in that subsection of statute. Really, just to kind of sum it up, a law allows for a one-time height increase of an existing seawall in a coastal sand dune system if there's really no alternative. In other words, if a dune restoration project cannot occur. So if you read through the provisions of that section of statute, you'll see a bunch of details, but it really comes down to, is there an alternative that can provide protection to a dwelling in the coastal sand dune system that's not a seawall height increase? Because as we know, seawalls do damage coastal sand dune systems, and so we wanted to make sure that the legislature wanted to make sure that a height increase of an existing seawall would be absolutely necessary in order to be permittable. I do want to talk about dune restoration. Pete Sylvensky already spoke to a couple of different options for dune restoration. He mentioned enhanced dune restoration using biodegradable stabilization materials. Those projects are permittable by rule. They don't use metal stakes or metal anchors. For projects that do need metal anchors, which we're finding, I think, are most of those projects, they do require an individual permit under Chapter 355. So that's something that we might be looking at in the future. Is there a way to potentially allow such projects under permit by rule, even if they are using metal anchors, because that seems to be kind of the primary factor keeping those projects out of PBR. But we have seen quite a few projects using those core logs as kind of the core of a dune restoration project, and we've been able to permit those thanks to recent statutory and rule changes. Pete also mentioned beach scraping, so moving sand from kind of lower on the beach up to the toe of a dune to help support dune restoration and enhancement. Beach scraping is now an activity that is eligible for permit by rule under recent changes to the department's Chapter 305 rules. So take a look at the specific standards for beach scraping that's eligible for permit by rule. That's an activity that you're interested in pursuing. Lastly, on coastal sand dunes, wanted to just provide an update on the Coastal Sand Dune Restoration and Protection Fund. This is a new fund that was also created by the legislature in the past couple of years. The department was allocated a $1 million non-lapsing appropriation, and so we have recently completed granting out about half of that money, around $550,000 in awards that were issued for projects in 2025 and going into 2026. It's a mix of dune restoration projects and public education projects. We do anticipate an additional grant round coming up, hopefully later this year in 2026, for projects that might be eligible to move forward in 2026 or 2027. So keep an eye out for that. We do have approximately $450,000 left for dune restoration and protection projects. One of the key criteria that the legislature set forth in establishing this fund is that permanent public access must be provided to any dune and beach area that's being funded by a dune restoration or protection project. So the projects that we were not able to fund this round, that was really the primary barriers. There were a few projects that were very good projects. We weren't able to fund them because there was not public access provided in perpetuity to those beaches. All right, a couple more slides. Lastly, want to speak lastly about Coastal Bluffs. A couple more slides on Coastal Bluffs. First, we do have a new permit by rule permitting option for coastal shoreline stabilization projects in Coastal Bluffs. That's in our Chapter 305 rules. So projects that use up to 125 linear feet of riprap can be eligible for permit by rule under certain circumstances if they're meeting the standards set forth in that rule. Also, biodegradable stabilization materials and native vegetation can be used under permit by rule in Chapter 305 to stabilize coastal bluffs. We also have new rules for hard armoring coastal bluffs in Chapter 310. That's our wetlands and water bodies protection rules. So just to highlight a couple of key components of the standards for hard armoring under Chapter 310. So those are the rules governing individual permit applications for coastal shoreline stabilization. There's a height limit of 1 foot above base flood elevation for hard armoring techniques in coastal bluffs. Also, applicants need to provide a 10-foot vegetative buffer above the hard armoring structure. And then lastly, when structures are not at risk, so when there are not structures along the shoreline, dwellings, roads, septic systems, et cetera, the rules limit options to tow protection for hard armoring. And then, of course, there's still the option to use biodegradable materials and vegetation above the tow protection. And then last slide here, wanted to put in a plug for the Our Shore Guide. Nathan Robbins, who's the department's climate change specialist, is here with us today. The Our Shore Guide will be published in finalized form in April, so coming up here very shortly. And this is a guide to nature-based shoreline stabilization options in Maine. We just went through an internal workshop on Friday to review the Our Shore Guide. It looks excellent. It'll be a really great resource for property owners, for coastal communities, looking for guidance on implementing nature-based shoreline stabilization projects in Maine. And with that, I think that concludes my slides, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today. Sure, I can explain permit by rule. So permit by rule is it's a streamlined permitting option for projects that meet standards for permit by rule. And it has, NERPA permit by rule application has a 20 working day review period, whereas a normal individual permit application for under NERPA has a review period of 120 to 150 days. So essentially, if you can fit your project into the permit by rule standards, that results in a much more streamlined, expedited permitting process. Thanks.
So I think one of the biggest changes from last year to this year is the role that York County has taken in beach management and what they've done to help us. And Chris McCall from York County Emergency Management is here to do this presentation. I think you'll find it highly informative. We've engaged with the county for at least the past year, if not more. They run the dredge program. They're doing a lot of great stuff helping us, and we totally appreciate it. Let's see. We seem to have lost, oh, there we go. Okay. Just use the arrows to.
Perfect. Thank you, David, and good morning, everybody. My name is Chris McCall. I'm the Preparedness Coordinator at the York County EMA. Now, standing up here, I see so many faces, so many people that I need to thank for everything you've done for us in the last 2 years. So I now understand why they had to limit Oscar speeches to 90 seconds because of that. First off, just acknowledging everyone in the room. You've all been with us for the last 2 years. We had people that have helped with permit and project applications, letters of support, external support. Many of you at the municipal level have invited us to sustainability commissions, shoreline commissions. And then overall, I even see people from the public who I've seen at different community meetings throughout the past. So at least when it comes to individual recognition, I just want to recognize Commissioner Chanette. Thank you so much for your support over the last 2 years with this project. And then also want to recognize Art Cleaves, who can't be here today. He's the director of York County EMA, and his leadership has been instrumental to making sure that this project has happened. So again, with all of you seeing what we've done over the last 2 years, you've seen maybe potentially snippets of what we've done and been involved in certain parts. But I'm here to kind of tell you a little bit of the whole story from our perspective, the 10,000-foot view, the different things we've had to do over the past 2 years, as well as the key decisions we had to make that got us to where we are today. So before 2024, kind of want to paint a little bit of a picture of how things were. We had successive storms back in 2018 as well as 2022. But in general, we dealt with these storms more on an individual basis. These storms did have FEMA disaster declarations that came along with them. However, we mainly focused on trying to get infrastructure back to where it was, and then kind of moved on from there and went through the FEMA process. Then we had the January 2024 storm, which was on a different magnitude than anything we had seen in the past decade. Due to that, we had disaster declarations at both the public assistance level and the individual assistance level, which also meant that we had a lot of members of the public that also needed help and assistance from us, as well as many of your constituents needed that as well. The one thing that did change between December 2022 and January 2024 was the 2023 purchase of the York County dredge. That gave us an asset that was at our disposal to use, and the January 2024 storms was kind of the point where we understood what we had and how we could use it. So again, we've all, remember all the damage from here, but the key points to make is that we had around 110 million in dune damage, 42 million in public infrastructure damage, and had damage across all 9 municipalities within York County. Now, at this point, we kind of had a decision to make as to how we wanted to rebuild. In the past, again, it had been a storm-by-storm basis, but we decided that this was the opportunity for us to try to put a system in place that would make us much more prepared for the next storm. So that led to Maine's first county-led regional coastal resilience model. Some of the benefits of this include efficiency. We were able to do one procurement process across all of the coastal municipalities that wanted to participate, instead of having them do it individually. When it comes to an equity concern, small towns could receive the same resources, the same engineer, the same construction firm as a larger and better resource city. There's a sustainability component as well. Through the last 2 years, we've developed experience with county staff. We have the capital equipment, and we also have developed institutional relationships, both worked on prior ones we had and developed new ones with many of the partners in this room. And then also just when you look at the scale, it would have been extremely difficult for any individual municipality to do this on their own, to be able to finance, permit, or execute all of this. So we're able to provide that at the county level and do something different. So want to look at least where we are today and what our goal is. So where we are is Category B. These were the projects that happened over the winter, and those are for emergency protective measures. So think more of stabilization. That was what the federal government would fund, and so we went ahead with those projects in the areas that we were eligible for. So it's temporary, it does buy us time for the long term, and we did these projects this winter in the town of Old Orchard Beach, town of Wells, and also in the city of Saco. Now, looking at where we want to go is this Category G level, which is more permanent, long-term, and adaptive. So for that, that's 100-year storm protection. It would provide engineered beach and dune systems, similar to the standard of how you would design a bridge, a seawall, or even a building. This is very intense engineering. There's a lot of modeling that goes behind this, and so that's what we would like to do there. Now, the total need for that is 50 million plus across 6 municipalities that are currently participating and working with us that have active beach sites that they would like to work on. So thinking of the timeline, again, we had January 2024, storms hit, York County, along with our municipalities, assessed damage along the coast, and we requested that presidential disaster declaration. In the summer of 2024, that's when our Category B dune restoration work was validated with FEMA. We awarded engineering and construction contracts back then, and that was the same engineering firm and construction firm that helped with the projects this winter. So all this was happening even back in summer of 2024. Then this year, we had those Category B dune replenishments. The county dredge was deployed for the first time, and now we're looking beyond for phase 2, trying to get that permanent 100-year storm protection. The other piece to consider, too, when it comes to this 100-year storm protection was you are looking at the fiscal sustainability of this. Category B was eligible under FEMA guidelines at a 90-10 split where the municipality had to provide around 10% of the funds for that. For Category G, right now, 100% of that responsibility is on us. If we got to that Category G level, maintained it, documented it, we would then be eligible for FEMA disaster funds in the future. So there is also a fiscal sustainability portion of this as well. So when we look at the stakes and trying to think of what we are trying to work towards and what we're trying to prevent, one example down south is from Buxton, North Carolina. Throughout the fall and winter, many of us saw different headlines coming out of that town. This is a town along the Outer Banks that unfortunately has seen close to 20 houses collapse into the sea over the past 20 weeks. And in general, these weren't from a landfalling hurricane. These are from storms that passed offshore, created a lot of wave energy, and the entire protective beach width that had been there previously was gone. So these waves hit the infrastructure and collapsed houses along the beach. It's threatened a major roadway that is one of the main routes out of town. Also, you can imagine there is extensive debris cleanup, emergency response, and remediation that needs to be done. There's debris washing up on different towns along the coastline, and creating a long-term environmental problem there as well. They do have nourishment scheduled for this summer. However, a lot of the damage has already been done. So when you look at York County, Maine, and you think about us and we're on a similar coastline, we have a different decision that we can make here, and we have the time to make it. So in January 2024, we had a lot of the damages from these storms. We've now done the Category B emergency stabilization work. We have this county-led coordination model that is up and running and is working, and it also means that no individual town or city has to navigate this alone. We're building up, again, the engineering, the permitting, procurement capacity there, and again, we're looking for phase 2. So for all of us in this room trying to think of where we want our future to go when it comes to coastal resilience, we have a decision to make about what story we want to write. Now with this, the science and economics do point in the same direction. There's peer-reviewed research, both on the scientific and economic side as well, for us to look at that helps kind of make a good argument for this. The other piece to point out is that this is not necessarily new. Up and down the eastern seaboard, there are many different beach renourishment, dune renourishment projects that have been done. What is new is trying to implement this here in Maine. So on the scientific side, NOAA has done studies looking at both beach width as well as dune height. Beach width helps for longer duration storms. Dune height helps more for these more intense, successive acute storms. However, as part of, or with this, They are most effective as part of a long-term adaptive plan. So long-term, making sure we're considering this, years out in the future, but also making sure we adapt it to changing conditions. The other piece is the economic side. The city of Virginia Beach, they've documented a 50-to-1 return on investment for their for their beach renourishment projects down there from the Virginia Beach City Public Works. And then the Army Corps documented after Hurricane Sandy, $1.3 billion in savings from the beach nourishment projects that they had done there. They had walked up and down the coast, looked at areas side by side, one area that had beach renourishment, one that didn't, and they even themselves called the damage striking. So we have this back up here. It's been done before, and it's something that we can do here. So again, with all the different people in this room, all of you are interested in public policy, coastal resilience. Many of you also have partners throughout the state that you want to help as well. So want to kind of help share some of the things that we have learned throughout this process that could help with future coastal resilience or even just general resilience throughout our state. So first off, documentation. When we started this, there were certain beaches in York County that had already been engineered. However, we weren't able to get that federal funding back because the documentation had not been maintained. So right now, throughout this entire process, we are getting detailed engineering. We're going to have maintenance that we're going to be documenting. Trying to maintain this, make sure that we have it for federal disaster declarations will be key. The other piece is that we owe it to future generations to maintain the same type of documentation as well. So that way, whenever someone picks this up in the future or is looking at what we did, they can at least see what our documentation was, see what the changing conditions are, and go from there as well. The second is there definitely is a legal authority here that's necessary, but really want to encourage what I guess I would call political courage in this case. With Category G, if we were to do this along many different towns and cities in York County, we would need easements, mainly due to a lot of the colonial property ordinances that many in this room are familiar with. With that, we expect broad community support. However, we know there are going to be few, yet vocal opponents. So that's where it's up to everybody in this room to really band together. That's going to be both from a political standpoint, but also the community groups as well, like SOS Saco Bay. Like their community support has gotten many of our projects to where it is now. So it's making sure that we're there to back up the political leaders who may have to have tough council meetings, tough decisions, and let them know that there is broad community support. The other piece too is if you have one or two property owners that maybe do not want to sign easements, having that community support again to talk to them, making sure they understand what the importance of this is, there is going to be a little bit of that component as well. So it is going to be something that we face as we go forward. 3, regional coordination is the only scalable model. Again, I know individual municipalities theoretically could do this, but when you look at the project management time that is involved, the staff capacity that's involved, and look at the permitting that needs to be done and the conversations that need to be done, it is much better to do that at a county level because of that scale. It'd be extraordinarily difficult for towns in this region, for even larger cities to do this, but especially smaller communities. I'm thinking of the state officials here, thinking of the mid-coast or down east. It would be extremely difficult for them to be able to do this on their own. Fourth is that predictable investment enables cheaper resilience. When you had the projects that we had this winter, we had to have them all very close in one window. The reason we did that is because mobilization and demobilization costs are very, very expensive when it comes to moving any type of equipment for any type of infrastructure project in this country. So when you look at trying to mobilize a dredge, mobilize construction equipment, having multiple projects at one time can help decrease the overall cost because you're able to use that equipment for multiple projects. The other piece as well is having a multi-year plan in place can help make more predictable investments in the future. So again, a lot of the construction equipment we had down at the beach this season all had to be rented because why would we purchase a lot of this if we don't have multiple years already lined up in advance? We would like to do that, but we didn't have that ability. So having more predictable investment cycles, knowing what we can do in future years is very, very helpful and can really help enable cheaper resilience in the long run. Then the last point is that our beaches generate significant economic value for the state. However, there's no funding structure built around sustaining them. From SMPDC studies, I like to cite this one a lot, they did an economic development study, saw that our beaches contribute $1.6 billion to our annual economy, as well as 27,000 jobs. And that's not even counting the different properties and communities that are there along our coastline. Our tourism economy depends on it. However, there's no funding structure that reflects that relationship. In general, that's a policy question, but that's something that this generation of leadership is going to have to try to decide to figure out how we can do this on a long-term sustainable basis. So again, we're executing this, and really we need partners. Luckily, we have many state agency partners here as well, many of which have come down here multiple times, have been involved in many discussions with us. I'm thinking of State Resilience Office, MGS, DEP. We really want to work with you and show you what this regional model could do for other areas in Maine and have it be a template for future coastal counties. Congressional delegation staff, we've talked with you in the past as well. You've been to many of our presentations, have supported us a lot. We are looking at different funding mechanisms for engineering, construction, predictable investments, trying to make sure that we can do this long term. And we have a documented case, we have a community need, and we have the operational capacity. So we're ready for those conversations with any staff as well. And then lastly, local, state political leaders, any type of investment that we have in this project looks really good whenever we go to apply to the federal level. Just having some type of local buy-in, local match, a long-term maintenance plan, a line in your budget, having that really helps us make the case to federal partners that this isn't just a project that someone off to the side wants. It shows that this is something the community wants, that it's a community priority. So having that is something that would be very beneficial there. So I guess overall, when you look at this whole entire story, we haven't been waiting for the next storm. We're showing what a regional and county-led approach can accomplish, and we have work underway. So what we just need now is future partnerships to help finish the job. So thank you very much.
One thing to say is Scarborough isn't in York County, but it is in Saco Bay, and at least we're trying to get Scarborough engaged in the dredge program. I think it would be advantageous for both sides because we need to obviously find work for the dredge, and we would love to help Scarborough by doing that. So we have one more presentation, Will Kachitsky from the University of New England. I don't have enough time to go over all the great things Will has done with us since we've started working with him, but he'll tell you some of them. And oops, I was so excited about the wave gauges, I flipped all the way to it. He'll tell us about it. Will, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you everyone else who has presented today. It's been awesome, and thank you everyone for coming. I just wanted to provide a few updates of what we've been working on at the University of New England, particularly around our monitoring program. So one of our big emphasis points in the past year has really been building out a monitoring and observation network across Saco Bay and extending beyond. This is a priority for us for a number of reasons. We want to foster this community of curiosity at UNE and build in our students this sense of awe and wonder about the natural world and better understand it. We also, you've seen throughout the presentations today, this really deep need to collect baseline data and monitor for these real-time conditions that when they come, such as the January 2024 storms, are really devastating to our communities. So we need to understand what our baseline is and when these events are coming. And of course, I think this event does a great job of highlighting the collaboration that we need to take place across us. And so we think these real-time data sets can really do that. And of course, at our core, UNE is about teaching the next generation. And so having better observations and monitoring capabilities around us gives us an ability to teach in a place-based, actionable way that really builds capacity in our students to support their careers. And then finally, my 8th point of 5 is to really help you all build more informed decision-making at the municipal, state, and federal levels. And so I hope these data sets will help you make better decisions in the work that you do. We've made a lot of progress in the last year. deploying a variety of equipment. The main picture here you see is a weather station we have out on Ram Island in Saco. I like to call it UNE's Saco campus here in Saco Bay. But next to it then we also have a wave buoy, which I will talk a little bit more about as well. We have a wave buoy in Biddeford that we're measuring those. And then you're seeing here a tide station we have on the Biddeford Pool Marsh, as well as a seismometer, which I might talk a little bit about depending on time. So you all have heard me talk in the past some about our drone imaging and our monitoring of beaches. Pete highlighted a lot of that, so I won't talk more about that. Just to say we're continuing to do this. This is a top priority. We've made some really good progress in the last year. Maybe the most exciting is we had a drone out last summer that helped us capture nearshore bathymetry of Camp Ellis, where the new jetty, the spur jetty, is going to go. And so that's been extremely helpful. We'll do that again this summer. So we're watching how these areas are changing very closely, as is Pete, and we work very closely on that. Of course, we just heard more about dredging. I thought I would share 2 photos here just showing you what that looked like. And Pete nicely showed a similar image of this earlier where we had this active work going. So nice to see some positive movement here on the beach, and we'll keep monitoring this going forward and see how long this stand stays with us. Tomorrow, we're deploying the wave gauges. We've worked with the city of Saco to purchase these 2 wave gauges. There's another one just like this that we're going to deploy on either side of the proposed spur jetty. So here you can see the anchors that we've built to deploy these. These arrived to Ryan's office last week. To Travis's office last week, and we will have these out tomorrow. The anchors that you see here what's going to rest on the bottom of the seafloor, and then it's a bit hard to see, but we have 4 pins in the middle of these that we're going to allow us to strap this to it and anchor the gauge onto the concrete platform. So that will be happening tomorrow. These are not real time, so we'll have to go out and collect these every time we want data. But the idea of this project is to really directly measure the impact of the new proposed spur jetty, or the soon-to-be constructed spur jetty, and what that does. So this will tell us exactly how much that spur jetty reduced the wave energy before and after that construction. So looking forward to getting these in the water tomorrow. So stay tuned. Next year we'll have a good data set to share with you on that. So what I was just talking about was the spur jetty, which is going to be built about here in Saco Bay. What we currently have deployed is a wave buoy built by an American company called SOFAR. They call it a spotter buoy. And so you can see what it looks like here. It's deployed here in between Ram Islands and Eagle Island. You can access this data in real time. I'll show you where to get that link in just a second. How this works is the diagram on the right here shows you we have a mooring at the bottom. Partway up, we have a dissolved oxygen sensor. I'll show you some of that data in a second. It's recording dissolved oxygen all the time. About halfway up the water column, we have a current meter, so it's measuring how the currents are moving in real time. And then at the top, we have this white buoy that then has a loop going out to the yellow buoy that allows that yellow buoy, like a basketball, to float freely and move up and down with the waves. And as it moves up and down with the waves, it's actually able to measure the wave height and the wave characteristics. And so that's what you're seeing then in this dashboard here, where you can see in real time what the wave conditions are. And so we deployed this past fall, and we've gotten some great data for it. So I just want to show you a few glimpses of it here. I'm going to show you a few different plots like this. It's showing you data for early November to about beginning of last week. And you can see that we've had a number of storm events. So you're seeing this kind of long-term baseline of waves, maybe about 1.5 feet. So you can see the mean wave height over this entire time period was 1.5 feet. And then we have these really pronounced storm events. So usually the storm events will see waves anywhere from 5 to 12 feet. There are a few large spikes here. You're seeing this one wave in particular at 30 feet. I don't understand that. I don't think that's real. I'm not sure why the buoy would have picked that up. But I think we can throw it out kind of as noise. But you can see some other large events in here associated with this storm. So we are measuring some larger waves with these storm events. So this provides a great record for us to see what the waves are doing. Not surprisingly here, in between Ram and Eagle Islands, all the waves are coming from the east. So you can see our mean wave direction here is 75 degrees. You have these small, short-lived variations in the wave direction, but really you see this long-term average. All the wave energy is coming from the east. Exactly what we would expect right between these two islands. The period is really important. This is one of the things that determines how strong a wave is going to be, the erosive power of it, and how far it can run up on our beaches when it gets to shore. And so you can see these longer duration waves can have more power in them. The long-term average here is about 5.5 second wave period. When we see these storm events, sometimes we see some of these longer period waves. And then finally, we're measuring currents. So the currents here are averaging a couple inches per second over this data set. We have some peak velocities associated with storm events where we're getting a couple of feet per second currents. And so those would be really strong currents that we see associated with these larger storm events. You'll notice the mean current direction here is pointing north. It's 5 degrees, which is different from the wave direction I just told you. And that's basically because you're averaging out the tides. As the biggest current is the incoming tide and the outgoing tide. And so those are averaging out to give you north, because they're coming from the east and west. We're also measuring surface water and then water at depth. And so you can see this is an extremely well-mixed environment. The water that's on the surface, in the middle, and in the bottom, we're measuring temperature in all of those places. It's basically the same. So this is a very well-mixed environment, which is also reflective of really high dissolved oxygen levels. So for marine life, this is really important to know how much oxygen is in the water so that the organisms can do their cellular respiration. You can see we had a slightly lower dissolved oxygen levels, 70, 80% in the beginning of December, which is fine, I understand, for marine life. They should be able to survive in that. And then you've seen it come back up even more, close to 100% or even a little over the dissolved oxygen saturation. So this is good news for organisms in Saco Bay. For those in Biddeford, we've also deployed a buoy just like this just off the coast of Boucher Park in Biddeford, near Biddeford Pool. The same data set except no dissolved oxygen. We think dissolved oxygen should basically be the same in these environments, so we didn't think it was necessary to put it over there. But we have all the other equipment as well, just like we do in Camp Ellis. We have it for Biddeford Pool here. So this is a very exciting data set that we're collecting now as well. Here in Saco, we have the Ram Island Weather Station. So this allows us to track air temperature very closely, as well as wind speed and gusts. These are also critical variables as we're monitoring storms and watching these erosion events come ashore. We can better understand how the winds are changing and what this means for our coastal environment. Ram Island is a great place for this because it's really unobstructed from everything around it. So we're getting really good signals of what the wind is doing out there on Ram Island. This is a dashboard that we've put together that will house a lot of this data. On the next slide, I'll show you a QR code. If you have your phone, you can take a picture of it and it will take you to this website. In the top right, you can see each of our data sets that you can get to them individually, but this dashboard compiles them all together. So you can see where we're collecting these data sets here in the top left. If you click on these, you'll also get a link that will take you to those unique data sets. And then here you're seeing a combination of a few of them that are the most interesting, of wind and waves here on the bottom left, which might be most relevant to this group, and then sea and air surface temperatures across some of these sites. So yeah, definitely encourage you to explore these. If you need these in support of decision making, they're a great tool. This will take you to that dashboard, so you can get all of this information. Never hesitate to reach out if I can help you at all. I'm very happy to. Sometimes also there are bugs and things go down, so never hesitate to to point something out to me, and I can work with you on any information you might need on this. So really excited about this dashboard. And as we add, we have plans even in the next month to add more data sets. We'll keep this updated as we add more data sets to our monitoring equipment. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time. We have several exciting projects coming up. One, we're building a wave tank in the Marine Science Center this summer with a fellow working with the Biddeford Coastal Preservation Coalition so that we can better understand a model of what these waves look like in the lab and try to compare them to what we're seeing on the beach. So we're happy to have you to our Marine Science Center and show you that. This summer, we're also working with SOS Saco Bay, doing more bathymetry studies, working on understanding these nearshore changes in Camp Ellis and Biddeford as well. And then we're also about to deploy another buoy that will help us understand water conditions with a company called Blue Sond that has just started here in Maine. We're hoping to do that in the next couple of months here. And there's a lot more to come, and we look forward to collaborating on all of that. Thanks to everyone who has partnered on this, including many of you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Should be noted that we do have like a lot of observation, not only from UNE, but I have a couple cameras on my house, actually, that were deployed by Naracuz, and I have the URLs for those, and when I email, I will send some links, and you can get your own information and become your own scientist. So for the next hour or so, we're going to open it up to everybody. My goal has always been to let everybody here speak. So I think what we'll do to start, if Kevin's okay, Kevin will moderate a discussion, but I think I want to let everybody introduce themselves, maybe ask a question or state something of importance that you're working on that we can help you with. So let's start with Nathan. Nathan, thank you for coming too. I really appreciate it. He's from the DEP and he's important.
How about that? Okay. Well, yeah, thanks, David. I'm Nathan Robbins. I work as the climate change specialist at the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. Yeah, good to see a lot of familiar faces and nice to meet some new folks. Yeah, I'll just go back to what Rob was saying earlier about the Our Shore Guide. That's just a project that we've been working on and I've been involved with for the last couple of years. And I guess the one thing I'll add is just it really is supportive to nature-based solutions, especially for shoreline protection and longer-term resilience. And it was great to see that come out in the presentations today and the great work that you all are doing, embracing a lot of those techniques. So I think that the Our Shore Guide will be very supportive to that.
Thank you, thank you. Pam?
Hi, my name's Pam Lebuck. I work for Senator Collins covering York County. And Senator Collins is a big advocate of our shoreline. As we all probably know, in 22, she secured over $45 million for Camp Ellis through the NDAA. And also, in update to 2025, she secured another $23 million, not only for the new jetty, but for the shoreline. And we're here. I'm so glad to be part of this. It's so good to see the communications and everybody working together for the ultimate goal to protect our shoreline. Thank you.
You can press down. Jeff, help her with the mic.
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Pat Boston. I'm the city councilor from Biddeford for Ward 1, which includes the coastal areas, coastal communities within our city. Obviously, we sustained some damage from some of these storms and are very interested to hear about all the initiatives that are taking place. Recently had a dune grass planting event at the Biddeford Pool Fortunes Rocks area led by one of our neighbors. And we look forward to continuing working with the university and looking at what successful strategies we can implement.
My name is Jeff Onan. I'm the Ward 4 counselor for Saco, which represents the shoreline area. I think it's important that we also recognize as we go through, and you did the evaluation study, the SMTC did, is that we've done some initial studies as well locally that the seasonal value of our shorelines, almost $70 million a year for us as a city. So I think our need to make sure we have a resilient shoreline is critical. As we go forward in this hour, what I'd like to have is a bit more explanation of what an engineered beach is, which I think would help all of us in the room to understand exactly why it's $50 million to do this, because I presume it's not just piling up some sand and throwing some dune grass on it. But beyond that, this has been phenomenally informative, and I look forward to talking to each of you.
Good morning, everyone. Jody McPhail, Mayor of Saco. I just want to thank everyone in this room. There is not a single person here who has not helped Saco and Saco Bay get where we are today. When I first came onto City Council 6 years ago, our shoreline was still uncertain. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were doing. We're getting it done. And from York County to the state to the municipal staff, the jetty's being done. Will, you guys and your students have been instrumental in getting us documentation, getting us information. These new wave gauges are going to prove, hopefully, that this jetty is going to work. And now we are comfortable to move forward with our beach management plan and with protecting the shoreline in the future, because every single piece has come together. And again, the last 6, 7 years that I've been with the municipal government, every day has been better and has moved forward. So thank you, my personal thanks from the residents and myself.
Hi, everyone. That's a little hard to follow. I'm Emily Cole Prescott, the Deputy City Administrator. Glad to be here with everyone, and thank you for the very informative presentation.
She thinks it's hard to follow that. I had to follow all 4 of them, all 3 of them. Ryan Pelletier, I'm the City Administrator here in Saco, and it's great to be here for my first symposium. Having come to this position, having spent the last 9 years in county government, I'm fascinated by what York County has done with the dredge purchase and project. And I guess I'm a little curious, having listened to some of the things that were said here, especially from Chris. This is an issue up along the coastline in the entire state. How many dredges does it make sense for the state to have? Dave talked about getting Scarborough on board, but is one dredge enough for the entire coastline? Do we need more? I'm curious about that, I guess, from a state perspective.
I know this mic is always live. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Truck Deaver. I'm the fairly new city manager for the city of Biddeford. I'm actually fairly new to the state of Maine, and so this is really educational for me. It's very helpful to understand where we've been, where we're going, where we need to be. I definitely want to commit to this regional collaborative approach. Thank you very much to this panel for offering this symposium, and thank you to Will. I know he's been working very closely with all of the Biddeford staff on all things related to the coast. So I'm just here to learn more and also ensure that Biddeford is a good regional partner in all of these efforts. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Favreau. I am the staff liaison to the Biddeford Sustainability Commission, and Will up at the dais is our chair. So thank you, Will, for all the work that you've done, and thank you, everybody, for the information that you provided today. Our Sustainability Commission is embarking on a public engagement type public workshop coming up this summer, and one of the things that's on my mind is balancing the needs of public coastline, public beaches, and the needs of property owners out there. So I'd like to begin that conversation at some point. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Justin Chenette. I'm York County Commissioner for the City of Saco, Town of Old Orchard Beach, Hollis, and Buxton. I just want to thank SOS Saco Bay and the city for hosting this symposium. I just want to echo Mayor McPhail's comments that it really was a team effort to get to this point, many years in the making. So it's always important that we stop and reflect on the progress made as a basis of where we go next. And so the fact that we've been able to really create a county-led dredge initiative, as Chris articulated, from scratch, is a testament to the hard work of our emergency management department, led by Art Cleaves, and obviously Chris's work. But every single person in this room really contributed to that process and to that critical work of getting it in the water and being utilized this dredge season in the city of Saco, in the town of Wells, and obviously the dune restoration efforts in Old Orchard Beach. Obviously, the work is not done. So I think, in terms of, the county's, viewpoint, our perspective, our focus will really be centering on how do we make this county-led dredge initiative financially viable and sustainable going forward. Obviously, that is in concert with municipal support and hopefully state and federal support, but obviously the county does incur quite a few costs in this process, and I think probably more than anticipated, particularly around engineering. And so I think there is a concern around, how do we make this financially viable going forward, and we want to see that happen. And so I think there are obviously other communities in this room and beyond that we would love to continue to enter into conversations around how we can best be supportive of your coastal resiliency efforts. And then I think, as other speakers have articulated, up and down the coast, there could be some partnerships that we work with. I think the question around how many dredges does the state of Maine need? I think it's also around how do we utilize the dredge that we have, and how do we make that financially viable going forward. So the county really stands at the ready to work with all of our strategic partners in this room to continue that good work. We have one dredge season under our belt, many more to go, but I think the progress made is really a testament to the leadership of every level of government really coming together to make this a reality, and the county government being the glue to bring us all together. Thank you.
So it should be noted that the county does have congressional directed spending requests in to get more money for more equipment for the dredge. And I think at the county level, they're doing fabulous. And I think, hopefully that any coastal municipality in York County, especially, the ones in Saco Bay that need the service of a dredge, will be able to take advantage of what we have to offer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jamie Fitch, the Sustainability Manager for the town of Scarborough, so your Cumberland County interloper. Really inspiring today to hear all of the collaboration that's happening down here. Scarborough's pleased to be on the periphery and engaged as we are able and as it makes sense, and hoping that we can kind of work together more because we all are a part of Saco Bay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Stanley with Senator King's office. I'm the York County Regional Representative. I'm excited to be here. As always, David, very impressed by the presenters and the engagement at the symposium. The Senator has supported many efforts through congressionally directed spending and other federal support, and we hope to continue to be engaged. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Berry. I'm the Senior Sustainability and Resilience Planner at Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. We are the regional planning organization for the 39 member municipalities that we have, including our coastal York County communities, Biddeford, Saco, and the rest down the coast. So very excited to be here today. Really interested in exploring more and echoing what Chris mentioned about regional collaboration. SMPDC plays the role in the region of trying to bring together municipalities and communities to think about problems on this regional scale. We also provide technical assistance on a number of issues, coastal planning included, but land use, sustainability, et cetera, that really benefit from this regional approach. So from resources, connecting, municipalities and staff with each other, actually across town borders, thinking about grant applications, project scoping. These are all things that we see every day benefit from sharing knowledge across the region. And so we are very excited to talk about partnerships and deepening those partnerships with regards to coastal resilience, storm preparation, data collection, and lots of other projects that we're working on. So.
Okay, is this working? Can people hear me with the mic now? Okay, fantastic, thanks. Hi there, good morning, everybody. My name is Melanie Nash. I also work at Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. Thanks so much to SOS Saco Bay for putting on the symposium and to all of the presenters. As Laura just mentioned, SMPDC, we're engaged in this work kind of constantly and consistently. It might be a municipal meeting here, a sort of event with York County EMA there, and it's fantastic to have all of these pieces in one place and think about, okay, where do we go from here? We've kind of gathered at hopefully the end of the winter, and what are we doing next? I wanted to especially highlight that hearing from DEP about those regulatory changes is really wonderful and encouraging. As we all in this room know, that is a big part of the accounting for these projects, is the communities figuring out how exactly to go about that permitting process, and having new guidance and updates and new things that are eligible for PBR, and working with groups like the Working Waterfront Coalition, I think has been really beneficial and helped communities kind of feel like these projects are more approachable, and that's something that we've already seen in especially nature-based strategy work that we have done. And then just to use a little bit of my time with the mic to do a plug. So for the municipalities in the room, I wanted to make sure that folks are aware, as Laura alluded to, SMPDC works with the State Resilience Office as a regional coordinator. So part of my role is to help municipalities directly with grant funding, specifically, especially the Community Resilience Partnership. So if you have a project you'd like to talk about with me, as Brian mentioned, the next round of grants is open now, so feel free to reach out. My email can be found on the agenda. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie. I totally encourage people to work with SMPDC. They actually developed a dredge program before we even got up in front of the county to request a dredge. And it was that program that we based a lot of our findings and facts on, and we were able to utilize that greatly. And they've done a lot of really great stuff. I totally encourage people to be familiar with it. With that, Kevin, I'm sorry, Donna, excuse me, Donna Bailey is a state senator. I want to say one thing about a quick story, that there's a $75 million bond that's still floating around in the legislature somewhere to fund engineered beaches in the state of Maine. And the day that legislation came in front of the Finance Committee, or whatever committee it was that would need to approve it, was a day that was supposed to start at 1:30. I don't know when it started. There were 5 presentations that day. The last one was the one for this particular bond, and the only 2 people in that room to testify were Donna Bailey and Laura Gramlich. But that's a lot of legislative power. It is going to maybe be discussed at some point. Donna, you're free to comment.
Sure. Thank you, David. So I am Donna Bailey. I am the state senator that my district includes Saco, Old Orchard Beach, and Buxton. So thank you all for having me here today. I was telling lots of people I really enjoy coming to this symposium every year because it really gives me an opportunity to hear all in one place, all at the same time, kind of these bits and pieces of information that I hear throughout the year. So thank you to SOS Saco Bay. As far as the bond, we would expect in the upcoming weeks to have a vote on that out of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee handles all bonds at the state level. And once it is voted in committee, assuming it moves forward, then it would move to the entire state legislature. The thing to remember about bonds, though, is in order for it to even go out to the voters, it does require a 2/3 vote of the legislature. So you do need to have a lot of buy-in from a lot of legislators in order to do it. I will tell you that last session, there was certainly more focus on resiliency and coastal erosion and the like, because we were just recovering from the January 2024 storm. Whereas this session, I think that focus has lessened. It doesn't mean it's still not important, but things like healthcare, housing have kind of taken over the focus. And so I don't know what's going to happen with the bond. Certainly, if it doesn't go through this year, I'll bring it back next year, assuming I'm reelected. The only other thing I wanted to say was just to kind of emphasize what others have said here, which is I think anyone listening to this can tell that in order to work on these type of resiliency projects, dune restoration, preserving our beaches, really does take a collaborative effort. As you can see, it starts at the grassroots level with SOS Saco Bay, up to the municipal level and the city of Saco, next up to the state level, the county level, the federal level. It takes all of us to get these projects done. So I think it's incredible how we are able to bring all of those resources together, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. I agree. These problems don't stop and end at the borderlines between cities and towns, and it's really cool to see Biddeford and Saco sitting side by side today, because they're the ones that we've all been trying for a long time to get to work together on more projects, and hopefully that's something we can do going forward. Kevin Roach is the president of Save Our Shores Saco Bay. He's going to moderate and do whatever he wants to do for the next half hour or so.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, David, for being the core organizer to reach out to everyone that got here. I would just like to, the only short thing I want to say is, it's obvious that we have a big event coming up, the Super Bowl, the Army Corps jetty, but that is only 750 feet worth of jetty protection on the south Camp Ellis beach. And they're only working right now on the rocks in the water. And they don't touch anything that hasn't been started or funds have been released for the sand replenishment. And the sand replenishment is a critical thing that all of our communities should be together on. Number one, sand sources, or the big ones, sand sources, from really every community, from Scarborough Harbor to Goose Fair, Old Orchard to the Biddeford side, Saco sides of the Saco River, possibly Hills Beach, other beaches. But then the start of the dredge program. Like, this doesn't just stop here in 2027 when sand is due to come in for Camp Ellis, but this should have momentum going forward for all communities up and down Maine. I mean, not just maybe even York County, Maine, but just everywhere. It is going to be a tourist event this year, so you could see it from the Biddeford side, certainly, and then anyone coming down the shoreline from Ferry Beach State Park should be able to witness very large rocks the size of Volkswagens going into the water. So, with that said, to start the questions, I did hear two questions that would go to anyone who wants to answer up here. The first one I heard was, not the first one I heard, but Jeff, your question about resources, what is an engineered beach? And then I'll go to the next question of how many dredges does it take to dredge all of Maine? So engineered beach might be with Chris, so go ahead.
Sure. Okay, I'll take both those questions. So when it comes to engineering, and I think you had also mentioned the $50 million price tag, first want to frame this as an infrastructure project over 6 different municipalities. So when you think about infrastructure projects in general, how much they cost, that's part of where we are at the high level. When it comes to an engineered beach, what we're doing is designing it to an engineered width, height, and slope for it to be able to sustain larger storm events. To do that, we have to do things such as like bathymetric and topometric surveying. So that means surveying under the water as well as the actual sand that's on the beach there. Doing intensive coastal modeling, so trying to see what a 100-year storm would do to that beach or dune. Also looking at all of the different permitting that's a part of that, which takes a long time, has an administrative cost to it as well. Same thing with a lot of the different easements that could be required to access certain property. The other piece to think of when we're actually getting to the construction of it is, again, there's a large mobilization, demobilization costs, but at the end of the day, the sand itself is very expensive and the quantities of it are very, very large. I mentioned this to Brian when he came down to look at our projects back in January, but if you take the town of Old Orchard Beach, for example, the Category B projects that we did, the amount of sand that we used was around, I think, 5,500, 5,900 cubic yards. So to visualize that, you take an NBA basketball court, you put about 30 feet of sand on it. So that's maybe up to like that second level in an NBA arena. To do a Category G level at Old Orchard Beach would require taking that same NBA basketball court and pouring sand on it up until you get to the height of the Washington Monument, and then add 30 more feet. So the cost of sourcing all of that sand, bringing all that sand in, whether that's from offshore, whether that's barging that in, there is a large cost component to that as well. It would be on a bit of a smaller scale in Saco because you have a little bit less of a longer shoreline, but that's kind of some of the things that we'd be thinking about when it comes to that type of level of protection. The second thing about the dredge, I would still say one dredge, but yes, trying to find different uses for it. So again, we have a dredging season from roughly November to March. It was only used in February and March of this year because that's when we had projects for it. But there are projects up and down the Maine coastline when it comes to navigational harbors, navigational rivers, potentially bidding for different contracts that can utilize that dredge when it's not being used for coastal resilience. That could happen in York County, neighboring states, as well as counties up and down the shoreline up from Cumberland to the mid-coast. So there are different uses that we could find for that dredge, but I think right now, one is what we think would work best.
Just one quick follow-up. The $50 million, is that the cost for only 6 communities? So if more communities did sign up, it would be more than $50 million. And the source of that wouldn't, you're fighting for sources from different sources, not just from the municipalities, or is that $8 million per municipality that they have to come up with?
It would be different by, so overall, yes, so 50 million across these 6 municipalities, and the cost per would be different based off of the shoreline and beach and beach area that's identified. So again, one thing to think of, like when we say county-led, what we really are leading or kind of owning is really the architecture of this entire project. So that's really when it comes to the project administration, getting permitting in place, getting an engineering firm and a construction firm in place. But really when it comes to the direction, that's up to the municipalities. What beaches you want, what areas are prioritized, what your community supports, that's really where that would make a difference at the municipal level.
Just a quick follow-up question for you, Chris, on that is, in an ideal world, let's just assume we get these Category G beaches, and I know we have a long way to go for that, but then looking beyond that, what you talked about was on these ongoing maintenance costs, and how does the county currently envision ongoing maintenance, and who pays for that, and how do you have any kind of cost estimates of what that looks like?
Yes, so long-term for maintenance, the thinking is that, again, we would provide the architecture and kind of infrastructure to be able to help with any type of replenishment operations that would happen. So we think the maintenance would be something that would be a byline in a town or city budget. However, let's say your maintenance plan required dredging or required bringing in more sand. That's when we would be able to facilitate that, use that economies of scale to make it a much cheaper option available to you than it would be if you were to do that yourself. As for long-term maintenance costs, we don't have that modeled out just yet, and a lot of it will be different based off the location and based off of just the erosion rate of these different areas. So, for example, like what Peter was saying, there's certain areas of Saco that are more prone to erode and have eroded more in the past. That those maintenance costs will be higher on the long term. There are other parts, maybe closer to Goose Fair Brook, where actually it's really more just documenting it year after year. So that is going to change based off of storms, based off of the just general erosion rate as well.
I have two additional comments on that. Number one is, one of the advantages, and Chris mentioned this in his presentation, is once Category G engineered beach and dune is determined to actually be in place by FEMA, that opens up those engineered areas for distinct FEMA funding post-storm that would not necessarily be available to help maintain that engineered design. So I think that's another really, really important point to make. Number two, I just wanted to mention one tool that the Geological Survey has been working on that's probably going to be released in another month or two that would help, I think, this process and also other municipalities that are interested in beach nourishment, dune restoration, or adaptation actions, is we are going to be releasing something called a beach scoring system, and it's in direct support of this effort along with the Beach and Dune Restoration Fund that DEP administers. And that is looking at York and Cumberland County beaches, specifically at shoreline changes, dune heights, dry beach widths, structure and road distances from seawalls or edges of dunes, base flood elevations, how high the dune or wall is in reference to base flood elevations, all these different factors, and pinpointing areas along the shoreline that would benefit most from dune restoration, from beach nourishment, from doing nothing because you're in a really resilient area that doesn't need to do anything, or, and this is one that communities really still need to be thinking about even in the face of all this, which is getting out of harm's way. So what are those areas where we might want to think about, you know, we might be able to throw some money at it for a while, but it's not going to be viable in the long term. So the tool will help drive those decisions. Is it going to be making them for municipalities? No. But it's going to be able to present the scientific information that then decision makers can use to help make those tough decisions. So I just wanted to point that out. Another month or two on that one.
Want to weigh in on this and quantify this just a little bit. The state of Maine's got about 3,200 miles of coastline, if my general understanding is right. 4,000, whatever the number is, right? It's huge. The miles of sand beach reside primarily south of Portland. So if you look at when we're talking about dredging, beach renourishment, engineered beaches, it isn't along the entire coastline of Maine in any way, shape, or form. So the majority of costs for these kinds of expenses will reside Scarborough South. That is where the vast majority of our public sand beach environment is. So as you look at things in scale and scope, it really does narrow itself down to the lower 30 or 40 miles of the Maine coastline.
Just couple quick points on that. Old Orchard, who Rep couldn't make it the last second, but they're very engaged here. But of course, that's the closest bit large sandy beach to Canada. So our Canadian friends appreciate the maintenance they have ongoing right now. Also want to shout out to SMPDC for engaging in their initial report on a dredge type program with the Barnstable County at Cape Cod. And so I always encourage everyone to look at their program of 30 years, and to this day, they still struggle with scheduling, funding. They've actually even come to us to ask about how we do with what we do with the state and the federal government on funding and partnership opportunities. So, all right, I'll open up for our group here for any other questions. Oh, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Jody.
Thank you. Either Will or Peter possibly. Peter, you had focused a little bit on Goose Fair Brook. Have we done, everything is focused from the water up to the shore. Goose Fair, is that widening? Visually, on the Saco side, we always had, right around that corner area before the preserve, was the plover nesting area. That looks almost gone now. Are we seeing height differential? Is that sand widening? Are we losing that as well?
I can start, and then Will, please jump in. Goose Fair is a really, really dynamic system that's changing all the time. I mean, by hundreds of feet in a year, the channel, first of all, migrates up against the jetty on the north, then down to the south. The sand inside is changing all the time, so it's hard to say that there's a distinct trend towards widening at the mouth or loss of habitat. Again, it just goes year to year. It's a very, very dynamic, sandy system, right, that is constantly changing, number one, with what happens in terms of sediment being introduced into the system near Camp Ellis. We know when there's a dredge, sand's placed, eventually all of that goes up towards Goose Fair Brook. That gets bigger, it gets smaller, the channel gets smaller, it whips around, sometimes it closes. So it's really hard to say that there's a distinct trend in terms of, for instance, that getting any wider. I think we're just looking at the system undergoing a dynamic shift right now, and it's, you know, it could, just like I showed, it grew 60, 70 feet this last year. It could lose 60, 70 feet or 100 feet next year. So don't have a really good answer for you.
I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I agree with everything Pete said, and I'd be happy to work with my students, and we'll put together the images we have. I'll send them to you of what's happened there in the last couple years since we've been watching, and we'll keep watching it. And yeah, definitely interested to see here after all this sand was added to Camp Ellis, if and when, you know, we see those impacts further up the shore. So I'll follow up with you on email, and we'll get you some more in the next week or two.
I wanted to ask Peter if he'd been working on any projects with nature-based. We haven't talked a lot about nature-based solutions, and have you been working on anything interesting and new? And do you see like any possibilities of using nature-based solutions in the Bay, or is that?
Most definitely, and I kind of mentioned it in my presentation. I think one of the newer techniques that is showing a lot of promise in the sandy dune systems is the use of these, and I'll call them enhanced dune systems. The largest one that we know of in the state was built in Drake's Island. I showed a quick slide of that. It was about 850 feet long, so pretty long, and it incorporated a cobble cord system. So the reason they were allowed to do that there is because they have a naturally occurring cobble on their beach. It's not just sand, it's sand and cobble. Like, you know, when I mean cobble, I mean rocks about this big to about this big. And that's a unique use of that cord system. You couldn't necessarily place a system like that along sandy beaches in Saco Bay because our beaches are sandy. They're not dominated by cobble. But you could still create a core, an engineered core, it's called, out of packed sand. So sand gets rolled into basically a polylactic fiber material. It's kind of like coconut fiber. It's just more resilient. And gets rolled into this tube, kind of like the geotube that's there, but not, more biodegradable. And then that forms the core of the system. So we've seen that project go in. We saw a similar project like that go in Willard Beach in South Portland, and that was a very successful design also. These are not done by themselves. They're done typically in conjunction with a beach scraping project that moves sand up the beach, and then an extensive planting of the dunes. So that, I think, is one of the promising techniques. It's not cheap. It's not a cheap technique. It's, you know, it's that 850-foot project was around $850,000, but that is comparable to putting that rock. And it's something that's allowed in the dune system under the new rules. You can do enhanced core systems with just biodegradable materials under PBR, but if it's incorporating not biodegradable materials, you have to do it with an individual permit. So I think that's very positive. The amount of beach scraping that we saw after the 2024 storms was unprecedented. A lot of those were done very quickly by private property owners. Like literally house next to house next to house would get 3 permits when all they needed to do was coordinate amongst each other and get 1 permit to do like 10 houses. We saw a bunch of those. Some of those projects were rushed and not completed very well. There were some lessons learned out of that. Number 1, get all the houses to work together. Number 2, don't scrape too low on the beach, otherwise you're going to scrape down to the old marsh surface that's under the sand, and if you scrape down to that and start eroding that, that's not a good thing. So there's some lessons learned there. So that's kind of a nature-based strategy that I think has been taken advantage of a lot since the storms, which is this beach scraping. And now you can scrape up to, is it 10,000 cubic yards, Rob? I think that's what it is, but don't quote me on that.
I don't think we have a limit on volume of material. It's really about 12. There's a limit of removing 12 inches of elevation from the beach, so you can't go deeper than 12 inches, and also not down to the peat or the ravine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then also smaller dune restoration projects that are less than 10,000 cubic yards material. They can be permitted under a permit by rule. So if you're bringing that sand in from an external source and it's matching, that's a permit by rule. That's a lot of material. You heard what Chris described as 5,500 cubic yards as a basketball court up to, what was it, 30 feet? So 10,000 is twice that. So that's a large project. And that can all be done with an external sediment source. So I think what we're seeing is you've never really been allowed to focus on hard systems in the dune environment because of the regulations that are in place. So there's some leniency with these hybridized systems, these engineered core systems, and just an increase in the use of nature-based strategies, given that permitting is now a little bit easier to get those done.
I wanted to add one math thing. So the dredge that just happened at the corner of Maine and North at Camp Ellis was about 7,000 cubic yards. The Saco River dredge back in 2018-19, if you remember the beach down at Camp Ellis, that was 60,000 cubic yards, so 10 times. The one for next year, after the jetty rocks put in, are 70 times, 5,000, 50 times that, 325,000 cubic yards. So there will be a search for sand that the Army Corps is not right now coordinating. So that's this whole sand talk and dredge talk and where the sand comes from. Really, that conversation kind of starts here or now.
So I wanted to respond to David's question about nature-based strategies in Saco Bay and what might be possible or what might be happening. In addition to the case studies and projects, Pete, that you're talking about, I wanted to mention a relatively new tool that was developed by SMPDC in partnership with the Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve and with York County Soil and Water Conservation District, and along with help and input from a lot of folks in this room. So released last September was a new web-based, nature-based strategies decision support tool. Rolls off the tongue. So that is, as I mentioned, a web-based map where you can zoom into different points on the coast, and I do mean points, where you can select a specific area, a specific beach, or a specific area of shoreline, and see scoring for different attributes of essentially getting to a score of how feasible a nature-based strategy is at this particular site. So there's a whole wide variety of different pieces of data that went into that assessment. There's an explainer of kind of the metadata and what all went into it as part of that map, as well as a beach scoring system. So Pete, I was writing frantically as you were talking about that too, about kind of how to coordinate those tools. But I would encourage taking a look at that if you're looking at a specific beach or an area that was damaged and you're trying to figure out what is the best way forward. I think tools like that and Pete, like what you're talking about, could be really helpful in thinking through where is a nature-based strategy appropriate as opposed to some of these other hardened infrastructure projects.
So I just had a quick question. We've heard a lot about this enhanced dune restoration project on Drake's Island Beach in Wells, and it keeps mentioning that it was very expensive. Does anyone know how it was financed? Was it municipalities? Was it private property, grants? How was that financed?
Sure. Senator Bailey, I can answer that question. It was privately funded, but it piggybacked on top of a federal dredge by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers of the Webhannet River. So they were able to get sediment needed for that and stockpile it as part of that project. So it piggybacked on that. So I think it stocked 5,500 cubic yards, something like that, 5,000 cubic yards of sediment. So that was made available to the project at no additional cost, really. But the rest of it was financed by private property owners, the 4 property owners that own that land.
Could I just add a quick, on the opposite end of that spectrum, the project we recently did planting dune grass in the Biddeford Pool beach there, the privately owned by the Biddeford Pool Conservation Trust, cost about $6,000 in dune grass, and then volunteers provided all the labor. So it's on the other extreme of what these projects can cost, just to give you a sense. So $6,000 for dune grass.
I'd also want to plug another SMPDC project called Climate Ready Coast. You can go onto their website. They studied, 15 different how many? 10. But there's a ton of different, I know like Ferry Beach, I think, was one of them. You can go in there and they make some observations as to what they see happening, what you could potentially do about it. It's really good, and so SMPDC, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I can just speak and respond directly to David. So the Climate Ready Coast, similarly to the NBS DST, which is the Nature-Based Strategies Decision Support Tool, is another web-based tool that essentially this was a few years ago at this point, but identifying regional priorities for coastal resilience and priority sites. SMPDC is working with a few of our member towns actually on resilience projects, many of which integrate nature-based strategies in some of those towns directly as a result of Climate Ready Coast. So in Kittery specifically, we have NIFWIF funding, that is federally supported funding, but a grant to look at nature-based strategies in a transportation planning project. And these are the kinds of things that if there are, projects that municipalities are interested in but don't know how to fund, don't know how to get started with, we are very, very happy to help support essentially scoping those projects and sort of doing a bit of the matchmaking for existing grant funding or thinking through some sort of pathway to longer-term funding. So definitely would encourage folks to look at the regionally identified priority sites for Saco Bay. That's the Climate Ready Coast mapper. Happy also to send a link to anybody directly if you want to send me an email.
Or I will try to put together a reference with some of the things we've talked about today. I know both of you, the nature-based and the Climate Ready Coast are two that I've looked at quite often. So, but yeah, I think that's great information to have. Go ahead, Nathan.
I'll just add real quick, another example was Little Diamond Island. They have a small pocket sort of dune there that they did a number of the homeowners that are right there pulled their funding together and did a great biodegradable restoration project that incorporates core and a lot of hand plantings and has an access way to the beach. There's a great video about it you can find, the Dune Builders of Little Diamond Island, if you'd like to check that out. But one of the reasons I think they went to biodegradable was cost, and part of that was that they could volunteer their time towards the installation. So one of the things that we've learned, that they learned, and I think what we've heard echoed across the state as we've been developing this Our Shore Guide over the last couple of years, is that one of the benefits to using these sort of nature-based methods is you can reduce your cost because the materials themselves can be installed by individuals voluntarily. You can do, I think for that particular project, they went out 3 weekends in a row and they did the plantings. So, and then in terms of the longer-term maintenance, it was talked about having a planting plan, sort of part of the larger project. I think that was mentioned. So Another thing we've learned is propagating your plants locally. So thinking about, a budget towards local greenhouses and actually propagating your own plants and then actually training and doing installations. So just another way to think about reducing longer-term costs and sort of making it a community event. Thanks.
Just a quick comment on nature-based solutions. First, we have the SOS Saco Bay conference in the fall that we host, and there's at Ferry Beach, and that has vendors that demonstrate some of these nature-based plans that municipalities and officials can review at that conference. I also acknowledge that a dredge is hydraulic, so that's not exactly, the most environmentally favorable task, but the results are for the environment. So I acknowledge that. And then one other thing is we as SOS initially for the Army Corps project, and we still advocate for wave attenuation devices, which are not jetty rocks in the water, but constructed pyramids that the manufacturing would be local. And once this project is done, we are still going to push for an extension of the jetty, maybe in front of Ferry Beach, or possibly, with state support, especially Ferry State Park, to have some sort of first ever New England wave attenuation device. I'm not saying it's a demo because it'll be permanent, but at least try to test it in northern Atlantic waters as a way to confront things. We're almost done. Some just reminder or apologies to the general public. This was panel Q&A, but if you have any questions, get it to our email, and we'll get it to the whole panel if someone can answer it. But I'll leave it in the last couple of minutes if anyone else has a question in our group or a statement or anything. No? Oh, Donna?
Thank you. I have a quick question. The Our Shore Guide, where are we going to be able to find that?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. The current draft from November of 2024 is still up on our DEP Our Shore website. So if you just look up DEP Our Shore, it should show up there. And we'll put the new guide up there, which we should have up in about a month from now. So we're just taking, final revisions on that. Thanks. And we're also, I'll just say, we're holding trainings for practitioners around the state on the Our Shore shoreline stabilization guidance too. So our non-point source training center is doing that, and I think we've already got 4 trainings this spring happening. But this is sort of like an annual program now. We'll be doing trainings around the state and at least one large annual event as well. You can find the recording from the November 2025 training for practitioners that was in Orono. The whole recording and everything's on the Our Shore website now.
Brian, how difficult is it becoming to find funding for grant programs, and how do you see the future of grant programs in general?
Yeah, great question. We're still really fortunate to have the State General Fund funding for the Community Resilience Partnership that's been solid at $3 million a year. And we've layered on top of that the past year and a half now the state's 5-year NOAA Climate Regional Resilience Challenge grant funding. So we have a bit over $5 million available in the round that's coming up right now. So that will that $3 million underlaying from the state is there year after year. There will be 2 more rounds after this one that include that NOAA, the federal funding from NOAA at the $5 million level. So that's fantastic. The 2 Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund grants that I talked about, those also use federal funding for now. So those are available. I think it's $20 million for the infrastructure fund and $10 million for the working waterfront fund right now that's currently open or will be open soon. Those do not have a state source yet, so we're still working on that one.
I have a quick question, if maybe a state official could answer, is where does the Supreme Court case stand with the low tide line for private ownership of beaches? We brought up before about the need for easements, and that case is a big case of public access to the low water line. Does anyone know what the latest is on that? No. So just be wary on the side. That's not our advocacy issue, but we do support as much public access to beaches to get the support we get from taxpayers and citizens, not only on the coast, but inland who want to use the beaches as well. So on that note, I'll bring it back to David here to wrap it up.
So I just want to once again thank all of you for coming. I mean, this is an amazing panel. It's an all-star team for sure. We hope to continue doing this in the future, and I'll send out some follow-up, and if anybody wants to add to it, by all means, please do. I think the best part of this, I think, is just being able to provide information and resources, and I'm sure I'm going to forget something, but please, you all make great contributions. Appreciate all of you, and thank you very much.